Dulce was a kind and generous woman, always willing to help others. Even at 60 years old, she worked hard to make ends meet. She lived with her 4-year-old grandson, Roman, whom she had been raising since his parents died in a tragic accident. When a severe economic crisis hit the country, Dulce struggled to find work. She lost her regular cleaning and sewing jobs, and money became scarce. Soon, she couldn't afford the rent on the modest house she shared with Roman. Their landlord was Ricardo, a wealthy and ruthless man known for his heartless evictions. He showed no mercy to struggling tenants, and Dulce knew what awaited them if she couldn't pay the rent on time. On a rainy afternoon, Ricardo arrived at Dulce's doorstep. She pleaded with him for more time, explaining her desperate situation. Tears streamed down her face as she begged him not to throw her and Roman out on the streets. Ricardo remained indifferent to her pleas. He coldly told her that she had to leave immediately since she couldn't pay. His words cut through Dulce like knives, leaving her feeling hopeless and terrified. With a heavy heart, she hugged Roman close, feeling the immense injustice of it all. Ricardo, without a hint of remorse, turned his back on them and walked away, leaving Dulce and Roman standing in the rain with an uncertain future ahead of them. They ended up living on the streets, facing the harsh winter cold. Dulce did her best to keep Roman warm, wrapping him in her arms in whatever thin blankets they could find. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, and Dulce often went without food so Roman could eat something. Despite her failing health, Dulce refused to give up. Her love for Roman gave her the strength to keep fighting, clinging to the hope that somehow they would find a way out of their desperate situation. Meanwhile, Ricardo lived comfortably in his grand mansion with his wife Sofia and their 2-year-old son, Estefan. Sofia, a kind and compassionate woman, was deeply troubled by the story of Dulce and Roman. She couldn't shake off the thought of them struggling to survive on the streets. One evening, Sofia asked Ricardo about Dulce and her grandson. He coldly replied that they must be living on the streets by now, but it was none of his concern. Sofia was appalled by his heartlessness. Driven by compassion, Sofia decided to find Dulce and Roman herself. She searched every corner of the city, asking shopkeepers, shelter workers, and people on the streets if they had seen them. She visited hospitals and shelters, but her search yielded no results. Days turned into weeks, and Sofia's frustration and despair grew with each passing day. However, her determination never wavered. She vowed to keep searching, no matter how long it took. For Sofia, every life was precious, and she was determined to offer a glimmer of hope to Dulce and Roman. Then one day, as Ricardo went about his business in his office, Sofia rushed in, her face pale and distraught. "Ricardo, Estefan is missing," she cried. Ricardo was stunned. It took him a moment to grasp the gravity of the situation. He looked at Sofia, his mind struggling to process her words. "What happened, Sofia?" he asked, his voice unusually calm. Sofia, her heart pounding in her chest, explained how she had put Estefan to bed the previous night, and now he was gone. She had searched everywhere, but their son was nowhere to be found. The mansion was secure, with cameras and security personnel at every turn, but Estefan was gone. Sofia's worry was evident, her face etched with despair. Ricardo, finally feeling the weight of the situation, sprang into action. He made an urgent announcement over the mansion's intercom, calling all staff to search for Estefan and review security footage. While waiting, Ricardo tried to comfort Sofia, leading her to a quiet room. Despite his own growing anxiety, he knew he had to stay calm to act efficiently. The mansion, once a symbol of safety and technology, now felt like a maze of uncertainty and fear. Ricardo and Sofia, united in their desperation, were determined to find their son as quickly as possible. Hours passed, and a staff member called them to review the security footage. As they watched the recordings, they saw Estefan playing in the garden. The footage showed him approaching the mansion's gate, left slightly ajar due to negligence. Estefan, still playing, managed to open the gate and wander into the forest behind the mansion. Rage and despair washed over Ricardo. He exploded at the guards, demanding to know how they could let this happen. Sofia, overwhelmed by grief and frustration, broke down, the image of Estefan alone and vulnerable in the night tormenting her. "Now our son is on the streets, out in the cold, just like the people you evict," she cried, her words laced with bitterness and despair. Sofia's accusation struck Ricardo deeply. He tried to maintain his composure, but her words hit their mark. Despite his actions and decisions, he was facing the same reality of loss and anguish. Sophia's raw sorrow and their shared feeling of failure started to make Ricardo reflect on his life choices and what truly mattered at this moment. The first night without Estefan was marked by a profound sense of loss and desolation. As the search continued, Ricardo and Sophia faced the weight of an endless night, struggling to find hope amidst their despair. Meanwhile, Dulce and Roman continued to navigate the harsh realities of life on the streets. Their days a constant struggle to find food and items to sell. The presence of Roman and her age often evoked sympathy from strangers, helping them scrape by. They found a temporary refuge in a plaza that, though simple, offered some comfort compared to the rest of the city. It had drinking water, a rare and precious commodity, and a bathroom where they could shower. Although far from ideal, the camaraderie and mutual support among the plaza dwellers offered some relief from their adversity. Dulce tried to remain hopeful, even though every day was a struggle to secure basic necessities for her and Roman. One day, a young boy appeared in the plaza. He was scared, his clothes dirty, and tears streamed down his face. Dulce, always attuned to the needs of others, felt a pang of concern and approached him with Roman. She offered him food, which he gratefully devoured. Seeing his exhaustion, Dulce invited him to sleep in their makeshift shelter, assuring him he would be safe. The boy, still wary, entered the tent and collapsed on the small bed. He fell into a deep sleep, exhausted. As he slept, Dulce observed him, struck by a growing sense of familiarity. Something about his face evoked a memory she couldn't quite place. Lacking access to modern technology, Dulce was unaware of Estefan's disappearance. Although the boy bore a striking resemblance to Ricardo, Dulce had never met him. She couldn't shake the feeling that she knew the child, but she couldn't explain why. Despite not knowing his identity, Dulce felt a strong obligation to care for the boy. It was common to find children living on the streets in her area, often abandoned or forced to flee difficult situations. She believed Estefan was one of those children, deserving of at least a temporary chance at comfort and safety. And so, she dedicated herself to providing him with the best possible care with her limited resources. Despite her own struggles, she didn't hesitate to lend a helping hand to someone in need. Even though she didn't know where Estefan came from, Dulce was committed to caring for him. She knew how difficult it was for any child to be alone on the streets and was determined to do her part to protect him. The next day, Dulce decided to bathe the boy, who was covered in dirt. She carefully washed him, trying to restore some of the dignity and comfort he had lost. Afterwards, she sought clean clothes for him from her neighbors in the park. In this informal community, everyone helped each other however they could. Thanks to their generosity, Dulce found some clothes that fit Estefan. While Estefan seemed more at ease, he asked for something that worried Dulce: his pacifier. She understood how important it was for him, likely a source of comfort and security. But how could she get a pacifier with so few resources? She asked her neighbors, but no one had one to offer. Feeling the urgency of fulfilling Estefan's wish, Dulce decided to use part of her emergency money. She only had 30 euros, a small sum she had saved for unforeseen situations or Roman's needs. But the image of Estefan distressed without his pacifier made her realize how vital it was for him. With a heavy heart but firm determination, Dulce bought the pacifier. She knew the comfort and security it could provide were essential for his well-being. Paying the 6 euros, she felt a mix of relief and worry, but also deep satisfaction in being able to make a difference in the child's life. Back in the plaza, Dulce gave Estefan the pacifier. His reaction was immediate and positive, accepting it with relief and happiness. Seeing his comforted smile was worth any sacrifice she had to make. In the days that followed, Dulce dedicated herself to Estefan and Roman's care. She would go out daily, searching for food and money, relying on the generosity of those who could help. While she was gone, Roman took on the role of caretaker, treating Estefan with the affection and responsibility of an older brother, keeping him comfortable and safe, distracting him with stories and games. Meanwhile, at the mansion, days passed in mounting suffering. It had been over 3 days since Estefan's disappearance, and despair began to engulf Sophia. Sleepless nights and uncertainty consumed her. Ricardo, usually stoic and reserved, was deeply affected. He isolated himself in his office and for the first time in his life, cried. Suffering and guilt consumed him. In the pain of Estefan's absence was palpable. In his tears, Ricardo prayed for his son's safe return, a reflection of the profound vulnerability he had never felt before. Weeks turned into a fortnight of relentless searching. The police and detectives were losing hope. Desperate and out of options, Sofia and Ricardo continued the search themselves. Every day they scoured every corner of the city, questioning anyone they encountered, seeking any clue that might lead them to Estefan. One day, while exploring the city park, Sofia spotted a familiar figure. "Look, that's the woman you evicted. We need to talk to her," she exclaimed, turning to Ricardo with a mix of hope and determination. Ricardo, ever reserved, responded with cold indifference. "Of course not, Sofia. She's homeless now, living in the park. We have nothing to talk to her about." "However," Sofia persisted, "many homeless people live here and could have seen something or have information about Estefan." Her argument, though well-intentioned, seemed to be their only remaining option, and she was willing to follow any lead, however improbable. Ricardo, reluctant and weighed down by despair, finally agreed to enter the park and speak to the people. His resistance was evident, but the possibility of leaving no stone unturned in their search for Estefan drew him in, even if it meant crossing paths with Dulcie again. As they entered the park, Sofia and Ricardo began talking to people, the tension and expectation palpable. Suddenly, Ricardo spotted Dulcie sitting on a bench, offering food to two children. One was Roman, and the other child had an incredibly familiar face. As he approached, confusion and hope battled within him. Then realization hit him with full force. The child was Estefan. "Sofia! Sofia! Is that what I think it is?" he exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. Sofia, hearing his desperate cry, rushed to his side. As soon as Estefan saw his parents, he got up and ran toward them, crying, "Mom! Dad!" The reunion was deeply emotional. Their embrace was a moment of relief and joy after days of agony and uncertainty. Through tears, Sofia turned to Dulcie. "You were caring for Estefan. How did he get to you?" "Oh, I didn't know he was your son," Dulcie replied, her face showing surprise. "He looked familiar, but I only saw him here in the park. He seemed lost and hungry, so I gave him food and took care of him because I thought he was just another abandoned child." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Sofia hugged Dulcie. "I can't imagine what would have happened if you hadn't crossed his path. You fed him, clothed him, gave him a place to sleep, even if it was on the street, and protected him." Then she noticed Estefan holding a new pacifier. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Dulcie explained that Estefan had asked for it, and realizing its importance to him, she had used part of her emergency money to buy it. "I only had 30 euros, but I knew how much it could mean to him, so I bought it." Sofia was incredibly moved. How is it possible that a woman who has so little still thinks of helping others in this way? Ricardo, hearing the story and witnessing Dulcie's generosity, was ashamed and speechless. He felt a wave of guilt and deep respect for Dulcie, who had demonstrated admirable selflessness despite her own struggles. Right there in the park, stunned and deeply touched, Ricardo apologized to Dulcie. He realized the magnitude of his mistake and the grave consequences of his decision. "I am so sorry for not giving you a second chance," he began, his voice filled with regret. "If I had been more understanding, perhaps we wouldn't have gone through all of this. If it weren't for you, my son might not be here now." Ricardo was genuinely touched by Dulcie's generosity. Seeing her care for Estefan with so little made him reflect on his own attitude. He understood that without her help, Estefan could have faced an even more desperate situation, without food or a safe place to stay. With a gesture of profound gratitude, Ricardo addressed Dulcie. "If it's up to me, and if you accept, I would like to offer you a home and a job. I want you to have a safe place to live and not have to face the hardships of living on the streets anymore." Overwhelmed and relieved, Dulcie accepted Ricardo's offer. This unexpected generosity brought her deep relief, and the promise of a new beginning brought a glimmer of hope to her eyes. With their decision made, Ricardo, Sofia, Dulcie, and the children left the park and got into the car. Their journey back to Ricardo's mansion was marked by relief, gratitude, and a renewed sense of hope. The house, once a symbol of a distant and difficult life, was now becoming a safe haven for Dulcie and her grandsons. and the start of a new chapter for them all. Back at the mansion, relief and celebration filled the air. Ricardo, eager to share the good news, called a meeting with his family and the mansion staff. I have the immense joy of informing you that Estefan has returned home after 2 weeks of anguish and relentless searching. Our son is alive and well, Harmo, he announced, a wave of emotion sweeping through the room. I want to express my sincere gratitude to everyone who helped in the search for Estefan, he continued. However, there is one person in particular to whom I owe a special thanks. Without her help, we might not have been able to find our son. Ricardo turned to Dulcie, who was present at the mansion, and said, You were primarily responsible for our son's well-being during this difficult time. You not only offered him food and a safe place to stay, but you also cared for him with a generous heart. Your kindness and dedication were essential for Estefan's return to us. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything you did. The entire room was enveloped in gratitude and respect for Dulcie. Her efforts and sacrifices were recognized and celebrated. As a small way of giving back, Ricardo continued, we want to make sure that you and your grandsons have a better future. We offer you a home and a job so that you no longer have to face the hardships of living on the streets. We thank you immensely for your courage and kindness. Ricardo's speech was a testament to his transformation and the profound admiration he felt for Dulcie. News of Estefan's safe return and Dulcie's generosity spread throughout the city, sparking a wave of compassion and solidarity. Ricardo's speech, highlighting her courage and kindness, deeply touched the community, which quickly mobilized to express gratitude and support. In a collective gesture of solidarity, people started donating to Dulcie, moved by her situation and the positive impact she had on Estefan's life. Many citizens and businesses contributed generously, and an online fundraising campaign was organized to help her rebuild her life. The fundraiser exceeded all expectations. In less than a week, the campaign had raised over 200,000 euros. Stunned and excited, Dulcie could hardly believe the magnitude of support she was receiving. With the community's help, her dreams were coming true. She had always wished for a better future for Roman, hoping he could study and have a dignified life. Now, with the money raised, that future was guaranteed. Aware of the importance of giving Dulcie a fresh start, Ricardo ensured she wouldn't have to worry about housing. He offered her the chance to return to her old home, rent-free. This gesture not only alleviated her financial burden, but also provided the stability she and her grandsons desperately needed. Dulcie's life began to transform in positive and unexpected ways. The community's generosity and Ricardo's support opened doors to a more promising future, where she and Roman could finally find the peace and security they had long sought. With Estefan back home, life continued for everyone involved. Sofia and Ricardo, finally reunited with their son, found a new perspective on life. Sofia was immensely grateful to witness Ricardo's transformation, recognizing the importance of empathy. His change brought new harmony to their family. She was also relieved and happy to see Dulcie and Roman safe and secure. Dulcie now lived in peace, with a home to call her own, financial security, and a guaranteed future for Roman. The friendship that blossomed between her and Sofia was a reflection of this positive new phase. Roman and Estefan, inseparable, further strengthened the connection between the two families. As Dulcie enjoyed her newfound stability, a question lingered. Had Ricardo truly learned his lesson? Would his attitude towards his tenants change for good, or would he revert to his old ways?